We are a nonprofit, small organization. We are totally operating under volunteers. We rely on social media, Facebook, Twitter, website to convey information based on sound science. We believe wolves should be managed based on the scientific data, not fear-mongering tactics, not misinformation. We try to set the record straight, put the information out there, and let people make their decisions based on the facts. DNR has set guidelines, how many wolves can be killed, what period of time can be used. Usually it's 30 days, but that can be extended. That has been very, very effective in reducing wolf conflicts. Back in 2012, with that new authority, between 2012 and 2013, livestock losses actually went down 81%, just with the lethal control and then the non-lethal control, which is already allowed. When non-lethal's been ineffective, then we could jump to the lethal methods and what's needed for lethal control. So we have those tools in place. In addition, producers are reimbursed the fair market value of any livestock animal lost to wolves. We're definitely not in that camp. We believe the decisions must be made based on science. If a wolf ever threatens a child, threatens a human, which has not happened in Michigan, but if that happened, we have the tools available. You're always able to kill any wolf that is threatening your life. Wolves are just so misunderstood. People see a wolf and they look at it and they'll say, "Oh, it just stared at me." That is very typical wolf behavior. That's not threatening behavior. Seeing a wolf cross your field is not a threat. You know, we have wolves that use our property quite often. We don't see them very often, but we find their tracks, we find scat, we hear them howl, and we catch them on trail cam pictures. Yeah, they don't perceive people as food. There have been instances where someone sitting in a deer blind covered in doe scent has been approached by a wolf. Firing a shot in the air, that wolf scatters. There are things they can do. Take everyday precautions, not feeding your dog outside, not leaving food outside that a wolf can get into. Wolves can very easily be habituated. And one of the things, too, that people just don't think about is they love to feed deer. They enjoy seeing deer. So they'll put out corn, put out apples, bringing deer into residential areas. And then when wolves follow, wolves are following the deer. We're totally opposed to hunting of wolves for recreational purposes or even for the management conflict. I had a problem with the way the last hunting season was set up. The zones were far too large. It encompassed areas that well, for example, wolves were killed right outside the Porcupine Mountain State Park, far from any conflict. Wolves were killed over by Prickett Dam, again, in the heart of the Ottawa National Forest, far from any conflict. Sturgeon River Gorge, a wolf was killed. Those are areas where we want wolves to be. These are the areas where wolves can provide the whole ecological benefits that wolves can put forth, and yet we kill those animals simply for being wolves. We're opposed to that. If there's a conflict, let's look at that conflict and then let's remove those problem wolves. And research shows that just randomly killing wolves actually can cause depredations to increase, and that's because we are disrupting pack dynamics. You may take the alpha animal out of that pack. You can affect breeding for the next few years. You can cause the pack to totally disperse, and then a dispersing animal may see a cow and go, "Oh, that looks like it's an easy kill," and take down the cattle. So it needs to be very directed towards the offending animal. Regarding trusting the DNR, we have probably one of the best wolf management plans around. I did serve on the roundtable when we created that wolf management plan. I have a problem though with the implementation of that plan. DNR, that plan highly stressed education. Education was a key component of the wolf management plan. Due to budget constraints, education has fallen by the wayside. Little is done to correct the misinformation. We've had situations for example, with this farm close by that skewed the data as far as the depredation. The local biologist wrote up his report, sent it to his superiors, but that data was never shared with the legislator or with the Natural Resource Commission. Another component of the plan, it says that we can use hunters or trappers to resolve conflicts on a case-by-case basis, which is what we support, looking at it on a case-by-case basis, and then to maintain risk at an acceptable level. Well, what's an acceptable level? And that's not defined. In my opinion, we are at acceptable levels. I have so many complaints with the way the legislation went down. When this legislation was introduced, I tried to get copies of this legislation. They would not share it with me. I tried to find out when the hearings were going to be held. They would not share that with me. It's on the agenda. It's all determined by the committee when it's going to be done. So I couldn't get a straight answer from when it's going to be introduced, when it's going to be. They are only required to give 24 hours notice when there's going to be a hearing on a particular bill. And on one particular piece of legislation, and I don't even remember which one it was, but it was one I was following. They've done so many of them. I got the notification, the 24-hour minimum limit, had driven to Houghton, gotten on a plane, and gotten to Lansing. I still could not have made that hearing in time if I had left the moment I got that. And 24 hours notice when you barely get a copy of the law to even know how to comment on it or raise issues tells me they've already made their decision. They really don't care what the public has to say about it. I have the message all on computer where those who supported this wolf hunt, supported a game species, wrote to the legislators and said not to approve it until the end of the legislative session, to give those who oppose to the legislation the least amount of time to challenge it through the referendum. And I have that in an email. And so sure enough, it was signed by the governor December 27th, the week between Christmas and New Year's. And in order to challenge that law, you have to have your petitions approved by the Board of Canvassers. You have to gather your signatures, collect the required number of signatures, and turn them in by March 27th. And so by the time we got all the legal requirements met and started gathering signatures, we had 67 days to collect the 200, and we ended up collecting over 250,000 signatures in every county in the UP. So every county in the UP, people signed that petition saying they didn't want to see wolves as a game animal. The third piece of legislation is the Scientific Fish and Wildlife Conservation Act. That was signed into law in August, becomes effective in March. It's a mirror image of the law, Public Act 21, that voters just rejected, except for a couple of little components of it. It includes a $1 million appropriation for Asian carp, for invasive species control. The problem with that, or the only reason that $1 million is in there, is so that citizens cannot challenge that law through a referendum. One of the parts of the Constitution says citizens have the right to challenge any new law except if it has an appropriation. And so with that $1 million appropriation, we cannot go ahead and gather signatures again and challenge it and put it to a vote by the people. The other part of that with the Asian carp is there is already federal and state funding available to manage this, manage Asian carps. It's one of the top priorities of the Great Lakes Restoration Project. So we already are addressing Asian carp. We're already addressing other invasive species. The only reason that $1 million is in there is to stop it from the referendum. And then when we ask the authors of this act, where's the $1 million going to come from? Nobody is saying. So where is the money coming from? Is it going to come from fishing licenses? Is it going to come from taxpayers? No one knows where this $1 million is going to come from, but it's in there. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of this law, which was also in Public Act 21, is free military licenses for active military personnel. So active military personnel will now have a free hunting and fishing license, which sounds really great for the active military personnel until you tell them that they only paid $1 for their license before. And so active military personnel only paid $1, but now it's free. Okay. And then what impact does that have on DNR operations? Yeah. And then the other part was they were saying protect your hunting rights. Well, stopping a wolf hunt does not affect anybody's hunting rights. The only thing this was impacting was the designation of the wolf as a game animal and allowing the DNR or the NRC the authority to designate any other species as game. It had no impact on any of the species already designated as game, had no authority, no impact on any of the animals or the methods used to hunt those animals. So it wasn't going to stop baiting, it wasn't going to stop trapping, it wasn't going to stop any methods we currently use under the current guidelines. There are plans, lawyers are already looking at it as to whether or not that law can be challenged in court and how it can be challenged, under what provisions it can be challenged. And one of the reasons that it can be challenged is the Michigan Constitution has a provision that says any law passed or any petition passed has to be a single issue. And this is definitely not a single issue. Yeah. So the courts will end up deciding whether or not this law is going to be effective. And one of the reasons we have a real serious problem with the Natural Resource Commission making such a decision is they are not scientists, they're not biologists, they're not required to use science. And opponents say, Proposal G says there will be sound scientific management. But the next part of the sentence says, to the greatest extent practicable. In summary, we support the management of wolves using sound scientific data. It has to be peer-reviewed scientific data. We need to have open transparency, not only within the DNR, but with the natural resources and the legislature. When there's an issue, we need to know the facts behind that incident, that risk. And we need to work together. We need to work with other groups to find out how we can resolve this issue.